Hi everyone, I'm Valerie. Today I'm here with Linda Jennings from Color Storm Yarns to talk about WheeshtE, Making in Uncertain Times by Kate Davies. This week our chapter is all about getting lost.
Getting lost. It refers to letting your mind wander and letting that creativity grow through giving it permission to wander in the right place. Last time we talked about Alice Coltrane, the wife of John Coltrane, and her wonderful jazz stuff. But this week, Valerie, you heard something that you said was very close to this chapter.
Yeah, it was a podcast about being bored
Mm.
and how in modern society, look, I've got my smartphone right here, right next to me. We're talking in front of a screen, right? And we use those as tools. But how often have we stopped at a red light and checked our phone and been at the doctor's office to wait and looked around and pulled out the phone? Like this idea or concept that we're so plugged into the phone that it creates a distraction. Some people talk about their phone as an addiction, which doesn't really fit for me, but I can see where we might be headed in that direction. And the concept and idea of being bored is sort of an old school idea at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Um, I'm often walking my dog or walking up to get a meal for my mom who lives very close to me. And sometimes I make a point to leave my phone in my pocket. Just take a
Mm.
breath, look around me, and just let my mind go blank or let my mind wander. Now, plenty of times I go ahead and play a game on my phone. That's fine. But I have been trying to purposely choose to not do that sometimes because I don't want to be constantly filling my brain with stuff or with actions. There is a value to being bored and giving your brain a chance to think its own thoughts, maybe respond to something that you did watch.
The contemplative piece, right? If we don't have that elbow room of space, how do we contemplate anything?
Mm.
And not that you have to be bored per se, but the space is what creates the container for getting lost. And if you don't have that container, then how do you get lost?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. When I'm driving,
Mm-hmm.
a few years ago, I had a challenge in my brain to not listen to the radio or a podcast on my phone. And I asked myself the question, if I was open to having a conversation with God, could that be, would that be boring? Would I take, would I give myself the opportunity of perhaps letting God talk to me and maybe talking to Him? The person who, according to my faith, made everything on the earth and me and is the greatest creator of all things. Why wouldn't I want to talk to him once in a while or perhaps open myself up to letting him talk to me? Well, what if he doesn't say anything? That could be boring. I want to be entertained right now because I have to go again on this long drive to who knows where, wherever it is, and I just want to be entertained because driving is boring. But sometimes I do give myself permission to just not listen to anything and see if God talks to me, or I have a good thought, or um or I just am bored and it allows creativity to happen later.
Yeah, that's such an interesting idea that maybe in the moment nothing is actively happening, but there's been studies and studies and studies about how if you're feeling stuck, you go for a walk, you get in your car and take a drive, or you take a shower. And like those are three very common answers to problem solving a question.
Oh.
So, like, studies have been done. You can Google it. There's all these academic sources of that. And maybe if we're trying to solve a problem, the radio, the podcast, the Bluetooth becomes a distraction to the brain's natural problem solving and the creative problem solving abilities of the brain.
Yeah, Kate Davies writes in this chapter, contemporary culture places an awful lot of emphasis on paying attention. And in so many different contexts, we're reminded of the benefits of focus. And there's a lot out there asking for our attention.
Yeah.
And to purposely turn that off, I think is a healthy thing.
I think there's a balance that needs to be struck. I'm thinking about I remember when I was in school and my teachers would say, for every 1 hour of active classroom time, you should be studying by yourself, independent study, double that amount of time. So there's this 1 to 2 relationship of 1 hour classroom, 2 hours independent study. And I hate to say it, but it works. As a formula, I didn't understand it when I was in school, but now as an adult, I understand it more and more deeply, and I get more out of the learning experience if I've done that 2 hours of personal growth and study independently. And then I really can show up to maximize the time I have in front of the teacher. And I have questions that the teacher can help me get to the answers about, but without that independent study piece, I'm really only getting half of the benefits of a learning experience.
Yeah, so if you take the idea of whenever we're paying attention to anything on our phones, on the television, in conversation with one another, our brain needs time to respond to it. And we should give ourselves permission to take that thought and just walk around with it. Ooh, yeah. Oh, she said this, or oh, that was an interesting thought. Where might that go? Or just not take anything else in for a while and let our minds wander and have a chance to take it in and respond to all that data.
Yeah.
It's another thing that came to mind was as a Catholic, there's three basic prayers that you learn: the Our Father, the Hail Mary, and the Glory Be. And at Mass, there are a lot of formal prayers that we say all the time. So I was really happy when a priest came out once with this book called Scribble Prayer. Scribble Prayer. His whole point is to sort of interact with your prayer time and let your mind wander as you're praying, and to make little picture words out of the person you're praying for or whatever your concern is, and give yourself permission to make prayer less formal, but to get lost. I mean, this is definitely sort of the opposite sometimes of what we do with a formal prayer, which can be very beautiful and meditative, and you can get lost within a formal prayer too. I mean, that's kind of like a whole nother thing. But
Yeah.
perhaps in contrast to that, the idea of just getting lost with a prayer and even interacting with it with your knitting or um, with pen and paper, whatever it takes to kind of get to the heart of whatever it is you need to pray about or whatever your heart is struggling with
Mm.
be unlocked with a bit of wandering knitting, a bit of wandering pen and paper, or that walk, like you said. Getting lost gives ourselves a permission to shift a little bit.
So interesting. So we sort of got lost and meandered off track a little bit, and we held space for that during our conversation today. Thank you for joining us for Weesht and Getting Lost. And I think on our next conversation, we're going to start the next chapter.
Yes.
And I'm looking on page 83.
We're officially halfway through the book. We've covered 6 chapters. Got 6 more to
Ooh.
come. So keep those creative juices flowing
Mm-hmm.
with giving yourself permission to wander, to get lost with your thoughts.
Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.